If Blair is alive, which is almost guaranteed given the unfortunate tendency for Armor to defend the bench more than anything else, you'll head to 9X in search of Erntere's legendary weapon, Selenius. Meanwhile, Voland returns to Vanheim for Nova Caliber, and Florence will return to Florencia for Goldbrand. The gang arrives at the shrine and detects the presence of magic voodoo bullshit. With the help of Flatty Witch McGee, you dispel the bad guy's magic and then prepare to fight. Now I do wonder if 6X hasn't been done or it goes pear-shaped and you just kill Chandra, what happens? This chapter cuts your deployment slots down from 12 to 9, and given that there's chests, it's more like 8 because you'll need Ronnie. Not much to complain about here, you have enough time to stop the thief if you use Francine and some 2-range weapons, even with some bad dice rolls. The enemy thief has to open a door and a chest and then flee. With many good rolls in myriad aspects so far in the run, I opted to take the most expedient option available to me. Alternatively, because you're probably sending Ronnie up there anyway, he should be fast enough to steal from the thief. The Eclipse Mage in the bottom can be taken out at your leisure, and you do want to take him out because he has a free Nosferatu. Speaking of Nosferatu, the boss has one as well, but he's otherwise a pushover. A quick, simple map, no you don't need to bring Blair, no there's nothing in the open chest. Moving on. Maximus is doing his thing, being evil and shit, mastering necromancy, killing plain savages, and heading up to the Tomb of Worms. Wonder what they got in there. Meanwhile, Orion moves into Deimos and gets ambushed by the titular Minos gang, who you might remember from Chapter 4. They're even more orc-like than the Braxians from Tac Tac, and I'll absolutely be making the same comparison. So War Boss Molguts, that's a stretch, is holed up somewhere in this fort, and in the style of the Tiki chapter from FE1 and 3, we can't see where until we open up the doors. We've gone from 9 to 10 for deployment, still bloody well not enough, but we'll deal. Just because we get a free dancer doesn't mean you can short me, you bastard game. Same for the dude who Kool-Aid mans through his cell somehow. Huh, deja vu. You'll also want to talk to Whitney on her way out. It won't pay off immediately, but rather a little later on. The centre area won't open until all of the green units have escaped, so there's a few turns of just waiting around. There are some reinforcements to keep you on your toes, and they all have a door key that you can only steal for some reason. Once the green units escape, you have yet another dangerous boss to face. The boss only has axes though, so bring an axe reaver. After Moloch is defeated, Florence shows up with the gold brand and tells us to go meet a very trustworthy chap by the name of Alva. Well, nothing can go wrong there, so why not? Before we move on, I know some of these maps seem pretty standard, well made overall, but nothing that would wow anyone. I distinctly remember being very impressed with several maps in Dark Do You Get the Joke Yet Dal, but after the death of Jasmine, the game is going to take a little bit of time to build up some momentum. For the moment, we're going to wait the game out and let it improve at its own pace, not that we have a choice. By all accounts, Chapter 11 starts off quite well. We make it to the fortress Alva is holed up in, and there seems to be an acceptable amount of treachery hanging around Alva like a bad smell. However, some actual treachery takes place when a bloke named Thomas, who is also invited to the fortress, decides he wants to try to kill all of us. Before he starts, he warns Darius, not that one, to not go philandering, which he then immediately sets out to do, because fuck that guy. This time our party starts split rather than being deployed together and being made to split up for the map. A meaningless distinction if you ask me. We also rocket up to 13 deployment slots. That took long enough. And we get even more units as Mid-Day? Marissa can be recruited. Alva can be recruited too, but for this chapter he has parked himself firmly on the throne. The objective is to defend for 13 turns. Moreover, we have 13 turns to steal everything that isn't nailed down, and take the desperately needed speed wings from Thomas. As you start the chapter, Alva has a special present for the tactician, a rapier equivalent for dark magic called Implode. That's awesome. Thanny bombs, but better. It's a little plain compared to TacTac's 2 to 3 range Seer Tome, and it does only use Flux's animations, but otherwise, no complaints. Florence won't actually lend a hand, and after a few turns he'll just flat out piss off. Like most others, this defend chapter can also be a defeat boss chapter if you stretch thin. A few decisive hits against the boss can do you a world of good. After a few turns there will be some steady reinforcements, and I found that was somewhat easy to adapt to. The top left Wyverns and Bocab can be pretty easily dealt with by an average Francine, with the option of supporting her with a bow in the chest area or Darius as he brings up the rear. The south of the map with Thomas can be a bit trickier. Cavs with both weapons, a Bocav and a Pegasus Knight at the same time may give you cause to retreat for a turn, then push back once you're reinforced. Or rather, you reinforce yourself because Florence isn't coming back. Thomas on his own isn't a threat, he just has a strong tome and enough stats to not be doubled. After dealing with this chapter and looting all the chests, we take inventory and find we have quite a handful of promotion items. At this point, the highest level unit I have is the Tactician at level 15. He's been getting fed quite a bit of experience because his growths have been shit. Orion is in a similar boat, but to a lesser extent. I think by this point last playthrough he had capped strength, but he definitely had less stats everywhere else. Depending on the circumstances, I'm still likely to wait until 20 before promotion. By this point my team should be starting to settle itself. That's not quite the case here. Darius vs Shermie is an interesting conundrum. Darius can recruit a lot of units, but I'll stick with what I know. The maps are getting more interesting, as is party composition choice, and the latter does not typically happen. Chapter 12 has another info dump. We meet two leading generals of Demos, Khan and Jenna. The latter intends to meet us in battle along with two dark sect voodoo bullshit spook boogeymen. Alva recites a brief history of Demos over the last 13 years. Raum is regent but not king. Prince Arjun isn't related and has yet to come of age. Onto the map, it's more monsters, as well as some normal enemies and some villages to get to. I'm going to try to refrain from making obvious jokes, but I will say Bane's con is one higher than Sanchez's, making Bane a big guy. As we start the map, I'm torn because we get an extra deployment slot, and with no chests we can even make use of it, but there just seems to be too many units I want to use. I've heard great things about Darius and Alva. Darius is only slightly worse than Shermie, and I've heard Alva is a very well-rounded unit and a shoo-in for the use of Nova Caliber after he gets trained. I've said before that I haven't used S-rank light magic in GBA before. There is an exception with Freesia using Samael last playthrough, but I also typically don't get a chance to use S-rank anima magic either. As it stands, I'd rather take this chapter reliably, so flyers and an A-team it is. We meet the final word in Axe Infantry, Dakini, and while I would very much like to hear what the female brigand scream is like, in an Axe unit I value strength more than speed, so I'm keeping Dale. Now you might not want to save the village as soon as you're able. I did that, and one of my objectives started to bolt. Had to get the old noggin joggin to think of a way out of that mess. We get pretty secure, and then the bad guys do a pretty clear-cut case of necromancy, as well as sudden but inevitable betrayal. One of the spooks teleports away, and suddenly the enemy is down 2 units. We get Susan from the bottom village, who can actually just fly around the Air Caliber Sage and his poor attempt at area denial. Past experiences are good, can't really argue with Axe Wyverns. As we get closer, the next step of Bane's master plan is to raise even more dead, which gets the attention of Durga and her flunkies in the house that no one was in. Well, as long as they don't bust out like the Burger King, that's fine. The boss continues to summon more Skelly-mans than your average Necron player, and what's really bloody aggravating is the archer in the back corner locking out all 3 of my flyers. No, none of these summons are really a threat, but the dude didn't stop for 3 turns. Could be worse, could be Tanis Manor and Radiant Dawn, 5 turns of strong reinforcements if you don't clear the map in 10 turns. Once everyone regroups, you can rattle some bones and surround the boss. Another NOS boss, but you should be getting strong enough that he folds like paper. We exit with Durga getting ready to pursue, and I am very much looking forward to talking about that chapter. And Clovis believing the very trustworthy old man. We're finally getting to the good stuff. Okay, you ever play Advance Wars? Likely not, but there's a map in Advance Wars 2 that I never managed to beat, where Sonya has to use indirect combat units separated from Lash's units by mountains to stop her from reaching her HQ. This time, we're more in the place of Lash, and that sucks. Further, we have a requirement to not face any marked Wyvern Riders in combat. We've got to dodge Ballistae, then bait out Clovis, who won't join us immediately, but will ease up on the Wyverns in the mountains. Now, seems to me you have the choice of one tile to stand on if you want to avoid engaging the Wyvern Riders, and you may only need to avoid killing them, but better safe than sorry, while also avoiding the Ballista, which may be a non-factor with a tanky enough unit. Obvious choices for this one are Francine and Dale, or maybe Orion with a Lance Reaver. A common theme with DLATMOL, yeah, I'm done with that joke, is end of turn 1 events. In this case, some lady on a horse declares her intent to ambush us once we pass a threshold. If you deploy Luca, you'll get a pre-warning of this event. Both the fort boss and the reinforcement boss are a pain. Bort flat out doubled Francine and nearly killed her, and he'll probably have a few backup goons that you'll have to deal with. The druid on the fort hits really hard and doesn't take much damage, but is rather slow, and you do have tiles to rescue any attackers with flyer support. What looks like a daunting and very lethal map can actually be dealt with in a somewhat straightforward fashion. And while you have a small area to execute, there are a few options to execute with. Dealing with siege weapons is rarely fun, especially when often the only choice is to rush them headlong. This chapter gets it right by using them more for area denial. No need for the third option here, Dorius, the first option works just well enough. Chapter 14. This damn map. You see, it's a damn. Well, what's more offensive, an awful damn pun or me calling it a dyke instead? A past highlight of this chapter was Emma getting crit by a Ballista, forcing me to restart after a few turns because of lost momentum. On this map you need to arrive at a tile on the other side of the map post-haste. Between you and that objective is a status staff, a Ballista, a siege tome and a boss and a half. The enemies drop door keys to let you through the top route, but there's a blue gem and a Draco shield that I want to nick, so Ronnie's coming along. I'll be honest, with almost every other map up to this point, I felt like even the simplest of tactics was enough to get you through, and there wasn't much to stop you by way of sheer random chance. This map is different. Sure, I was lucky this time to dodge all 3 sleep staves, and I took the restore staff up there in case it did hit, but what if I critically needed to heal a unit at the same time because of some unlucky hits? It'd slow me down, possibly too much, and I'd have to start over. And so, after a few turns of shaky RNG dependence and 9 turns total of some actually pretty tame pushing and flank guarding, Durga will show up. You now have a harsh time limit, roughly 11 more turns by my reckoning, to not only do your objective, but stop her from reaching a specific fort tile. You can, if you're desperate, park someone on that fort tile and pray Durga can't one-round them. Fat fucking chance, given her bases and sword stat bonus, she's got the stats to tangle with the final boss favourably. Despite my need for haste, I stack up around the 2 fort tiles as I had a memory in the back of my head of dudes spawning all of a sudden once that threshold was crossed. Still, it has to be done, especially with those wyverns bearing down, and apparently my memory is faulty. Nevertheless, there was something that was bullshit after the forts, and it's that fucking Armor Knight with silvers. That's a dead Dale, by all accounts, even if he wasn't at base defense. I'd say a Lance Reaver would have been a safer bet, or maybe dancing up and killing the Armor Knight with an effective weapon. Either way, seems quite RNG dependent to me, though I'll admit to making a few mistakes, like not blocking Dale off with Francine. To further complicate matters, our haste must now be measured against trying to recruit Whitney. She'll reach us before Durga, no doubt about that, but it seems to me much better to just secure victory and then deal with the side objective. And of course I was right about enemy reinforcements spawning in the open field. That's an illegal move. Push past the boss, use a bit of dark magic against the Armor Knights, get Dale angry enough about a 37% hit to crit for the first time in this playthrough, I'm pretty sure, and finish the map. Here we finally see our tactician's big brain strategy come to fruition. If we're going to be dealing with Durga, the human cruise missile, then just pop her back into the water. Durga the Invincible is no more. Right? Right. Anyway, one of her henchmen makes it sound like he wants to go off and be an artist or something and leaves, and finally we check out what Voland is up to. Jenna's big magical surge has weakened her significantly and now she's on the back foot. Until Mox Molyon warps in, tells Voland to piss off, summons a druid, Gwilgi and... oh shit, 2 Necro Dragons. We're in for a rough patch. This was one of the maps I really wanted to talk about. I'm an idiot, so I didn't guess the plan, though I may have been too preoccupied with actually playing the chapter. Too few Fire Emblem games have you in a full retreat. DLATMOL isn't really an exception. This map is a retreat in part, but it is in fact advancing in the opposite direction through an enemy fortress. Gameplay and story combine excellently. The tactician is actually using their knowledge of the whole battlefield and environment to ensure victory. Sun Tzu would be proud. That and the split route around the mountain that still manages to converge at roughly the same time, this map is definitely one of the best in the game, I'd say the best so far, which is good because typically maps should be improving as the game goes on. This is absolutely a solid mid-game chapter with all the complexity that it can afford to bring. It's not perfect of course, I mentioned last chapter a headlong charge into siege weapons isn't ideal. Coupled with a status staff even with limited range, tactics can become a bit irrelevant in the face of RNG, beyond the obvious send strongest, send staff, reset until it works. Now I managed to get this chapter done without resetting this playthrough even though I probably should have, but by all means if you play this chapter for the first time, do not feel bad about resetting. As for Iron Manning, well, I can't help you there. Next up is one of the first multi-part chapters. Chapter 15 is going to take a while. Chapter 15 starts with... Eligor? Oh no. Well, luckily he's a Wyvern rider, so he doesn't have a spear, so DLATMOL can continue to be a good hack, rather than a dogshit one. Back down to 12 slots, great. Well, given there's a short bow drop and my dumbass didn't buy some spare bows, and Luke is the highest level in the army, I'll drop him and see what Sherry can do. Susan is also coming along, owing to success in a previous playthrough, and Ronnie is needed to pinch that stat booster. Look, too many hacks make it a point to try to make thieves more useful. I get it, I just don't like it, and would rather the item just drop if I can kill the dude. This map definitely deserves to be known as a monster mash, and as usual at the end of turn 1, we get warned of something upcoming. In this case it's not relevant to the map, but the Minos gang are back. We didn't actually kill Moloch, and now he's spoiling for a fight. Vito and Eagle are locked up tight, but Vito interestingly doesn't have enough strength to one-round most of the monsters. If you're wanting to hold a choke point, this is ideal. Even with some unlucky rolls, you should be able to get to him in time. Reinforcements from the forts are pretty cheeky, spawning in with killer weapons. With enough 2 range they shouldn't be a problem. The bosses should be a non-issue, certainly Eligor folds before some triangle advantage and effective weaponry. But Dindu, despite 1 luck and a Devil Axe, refused to self-destruct, even getting an absolute bastard of a hit. Not a bad map, certainly less to it than previous, but that's fine as this is really 1/3 of a chapter, and the second third is quite impressive. Chapter 15 Part 2 actually has you start with the castle you just seized, as far as I can tell, down to the same tiles, -1 ballista. You're outnumbered, outgunned, and outmaneuvered. Maximilian is at full power, holding a Lunar and Bolting Tome and escorted by 2 Necro Dragons, who are all but guaranteed to do 27 damage to any unit. He also has a Kerberos, not a Gwilgi as they are in Sacred Stones, who is going to outspeed most of your army. On the bright side, we have, to my knowledge, the first dev commentary. Instead of FE7's Augury, an ingenious idea was had and it was replaced by something I've seen in no other ROM hack, which is a shame because in my mind a ROM hack is the perfect opportunity to put yourself into a Fire Emblem experience. Not like a self-insert, which I appreciate if there is a self-insert of a DLATMOL dev, it's the Ratman or the Power Ranger. I mean playing Fire Emblem and putting a unique or interesting spin on the experience per your experiences with the series, and you could use dev commentary to explain the decisions made, or scrapped ideas, or how one tiny thing went wrong and you spent 2 hours trying to unfuck something before you just went to a previous version. ROM hacking isn't easy, but creative things like this make them worth making and well worth playing. So, what wisdom does the dev have in store for us? Well, he sure is succinct, if nothing else. Poison weapons galore here, so bring your antitoxins. Necro Dragons, and I know in game they're called Draco Zombies, but I'm only ever going to call them Necro Dragons. They're not something you want to underestimate. Bring your effective weapons, which does include bows. You have to hold for 9 turns. Make a retreat if at any point you feel you're in danger. Unless that danger is a Necro Dragon, in which case honestly you might be fucked. This is a tough chapter. The monsters mean business and you're blocked from advancing into a preliminary strike by Ballistae. I should have lost a unit a couple of times for sure, Dale in particular, but outside of Francine, everybody has been getting some absolutely fucked growths. Dale is still at base defense and that isn't likely to change it seems. This is an onslaught you can only mitigate, not control, and one mistake means the all but certain death of a unit. The 9 turn limit is a generous one at least, and oftentimes the reinforcements can be dealt with easily by one or a pair of units. You've got the chokes, you've got the forts, you've got what you need to keep everyone alive. It's rare that a defense chapter really makes you play conservatively. There's something in particular about 15.3 that I'll mention in a moment, but 15.2? Hardest map so far, easily. Speaking of conservatism, a player other than myself ought to promote some units to make things a little easier, but I'm still holding out for level 20 unless things get dire. Mecha Max finally puts down Moloch, but not before the latter absolutely rips Max a new one, going out like a true war boss and putting an end to his au revoir.
Just because they were there.
Chapter 15.3 has a special Gaiden requirement, and unlike the last two Gaidens, you're going to have to work for it. After Max took an axe to the face, his stats were lowered enough that we can now safely engage him. Safely might not be the right word, but definitely without getting instantly destroyed. Now, depending on how well your inventory has been managed, you might be pretty desperate to hit those shops. I know I am. However, running away is the better part of Valor, so once that Berserker started bearing down on me, I decided I'd support the flying shopping trip. The reinforcements out of the forts on this map are a bit more of a threat than usual. Steel weapons and decent stats means you've got to be ready to take a nasty hit. We've got another Armonite prankster with silver weapons, but this one can be singled out and baited to attack a fort tile, so there's a lot less risk this time. There's no real good way to tackle the Necro Dragon aside from effective weaponry, and even then it left my entire left flank on single digit HP. Hopefully they'll become less of a threat once everyone promotes and gets some HP into them. You want to be sure nobody's going to die if they fight Maximilian, most importantly your Tactician. Hope you've got a Seraph Robe in the convoy if they can't. But it's okay, the Tactician only needs to fight Maxi once and doesn't need to secure the kill. That's better left to someone with effective damage. Yeah, hit rates are dog shit, but just as you might need to plan for units not to hit, you can also plan for units to hit. The reinforcements from the rear could be dangerous if you've lagged a bit, but by the time you're up at max, you've got some very advantageous terrain, especially if you have the freedom afforded by taking out the Necro Dragon. Maxie can't believe he lost and he is declared dead. We're now approaching the one chapter I won't cover, sort of. See, there's an alternate chapter 16 if you don't fulfill the guidance requirements, or maybe the one I'll play is the alternate, whatever. Doing it this way feels like a sort of true route, until later on where there is a route split. I do intend to discuss both routes, but I'm going to play my route, then come back to talk about the other route's maps. It's my opinion you should endeavour to reach all Gaiden chapters and recruit all units, though I'll mention that I've never played 19XX Genesis in vanilla FE7. But first we do actually have to clear 15X, which, if I'm not mistaken,
In 10 minutes, yes, we'll fill the room. You have only 10 minutes to escape the gas. In this room, there's gas. If you breathe in the gas, you're gonna die.
okay, well I should be safe here.
Gas.
God damn it! Way back in chapter 3 I mentioned that restore staves might end up in short supply. In part, that's this chapter's fault. It's also my fault for my stubborn refusal to use antitoxins. Our deployment slots have been harshly cut down to 9 and we need a thief, as well as wanting to deploy Tact and Francine to gain support points. Okay, well deployment restrictions are more than just a low maximum number. Good news, Orion can promote. Even more good news, his sword's getting even bigger is intentional. The dev gets it, as we see in the commentary. Lady Necromancer sprite, huh? I did do a playthrough as the Lady Tactician in Tac once. Maybe one day I'll come back to DLATMOL and do a Lady Tact run too. The map has a turn limit, 18 turns to, as I like to say, steal everything that isn't nailed down. There's not a sword to be found on this map, but there is an axe reaver, so be careful. There's just mages, armor knights, and the boss's 2 pet soldiers. An unreachable siege weapon is again very annoying, but the consolation prize is even if you're almost certain to not take the bolting tome from the enemy, there is one in the chest he's standing on. This is the least worthwhile thing to loot from this chapter because the member card, Avers drops, and a failed contract is also here for the taking. As for this map's gimmick, I like it. It's subtle and keeps slipping my memory, especially because I did know what was coming and was prepared for it. I imagine most people's first experience with this chapter was similar to mine, where they either didn't see the gas traps or forgot they were there and immediately felt stupid for doing so. You don't have to blitz this chapter as fast as possible, 18 turns is quite lenient. Gaiden chapters so far are a little gimmicky but rather short. I'm going to tell you something important. The secret shop is on this chapter. If you want to find it for yourself, just skip to the next chapter. I'm basically done discussing this one. Okay, you good? Where's the secret shop? It's right here. Last playthrough, I don't think I found it. I'm pretty sure I nabbed the member card and spent the whole game waiting to find the secret shop. The first thing I noticed surveying the map this time around was the door past the boss, and mostly I dismissed it. Then I was told there is a secret shop on this map, and I put 2 and 2 together. A quick look around at all the tiles and I found it. And judging by the footage, something found me too. With the ROM breaking down around me, I buy some integral dragon slaying weaponry and off the boss. For the sake of consistency, I'm going to refer to the Chapter 16. I'm not playing as the alternate one. And I bet that the alternate Chapter 16 is an assault rather than a defense. That suits me better, as I don't think of it as being surrounded, but rather a target-rich environment. I'm employing something a bit more unconventional for me. I'm almost certain I've never used an unlock staff before in any FE game. However, no time like the present, and while I do have a spare lockpick, may as well use up the one I've got. Come turn 5, there's another sudden but inevitable betrayal and a bullshit crit, and suddenly monsters are appearing. However, very soon we'll have someone very special who should be able to deal with that particular problem. Good thing I took the time to check, because there's a very special prize waiting for us if we push. The Valkyrie lady had a berserk staff, but Weena here has boots. We have 7 turns to take our prize, and I bloody well intend to. Well, that was easy. I'd like some more experience, please, and it seems I can chop this Weena at my leisure, so let's see what he's got. Oh, we also got Kiri, who I intend to put to immediate use. Kiri was on the buffs list, however given I'm certain 3 of them are buffed only in growths, and she seems to have 0 skill, even Naya had 1 skill, I'm gonna guess she's the same. Or maybe the Dragonstone got buffed, I don't know. After dealing with Weena's shitty monster spawns, we do have an extra turn, and I could use it to see what he does, but I'd rather just steal his boots for myself and get a fun surprise. What's this? Ronnie broke double-digit strength? We are absolutely on the up and up with these growths. After the entirety of the early game getting pretty well buggered, or at least Emma stealing everyone else's good growths, the pendulum seems to have swung. As I write this, I'm worried about commentator's curse, but otherwise I'm pretty well chuffed. Thanks, past me. Anyway, this is a good defence map, wide open but with definitive flanks and not so overwhelming as to give you much pucker factor. You get a little bit of a surprise if you let the chapter play out, not just the walls allowing easy access to your defend point, but also little Wiener starts to approach. Again, you don't need to get the person in the cell out of the cell, but hey, 26 experience is 26 experience. And we also see our first obvious case of Dragon Boober. Also, she talks like a vampire, but she's supposed to be 1,000 years old or whatever, and you need to make her speech seem antiquated or foreign somehow. Kathy shows up with some holy boys after we do everything, and the chapter's over. This chapter probably marks the start of late game. Promotions are being handed out, and while my team is not 100% concrete, everyone fortunately seems to have enough stats to compete in their own way. We also finally get the payoff for dropping Arthur because we've gone from 1 staff to 2 if we deploy a dancer, which is definitely not a full-time staff job, to 4 staffers that can all heal almost any unit back up to full. One of a few reasons I say you can never deploy enough staves is because come promotion time it feels like they get handed out like candy. If you've played Sacred Trilogy, you'll know that goes doubly so for that game. Let's continue with DLATMOL. Fucking only hacks I've played that are good are FE7 hacks. What's up with that? It's a good thing there are so many trustworthy men about, otherwise this one friendly dude pointing us toward the cathedral we were going to visit anyway might rouse suspicion. The tactician's half-sistered by some wine. Oh, by the way, Jenna and the tactician have the same father, I think. Florence gets left at an inn, and we're off to another Fog of War chapter. Before we start, Dale and Shermie promote. Orion gets the boots because honestly I don't know who's a better recipient. We get more commentary. I like the slight nerd out over aesthetics, and while I don't intend to use Kathy, let's show off these feminine animations. Yeah, they look good. You might have noticed a few chapters ago that this hack uses different halberdier animations from most others, mostly drawing from, as the dev says, beta Ephraim animations. No complaints, it looks good, the individual look of a ROM hack is an important factor. As for Kathy as a unit, absolutely solid, the problem is her strength stat. Now Ty has been a bit screwed outside of his capped strength. In a crit class like halberdier, skill and luck are important stats. However, I am not dropping him, and more than likely he's going to be the one to use the pastrami. Then there's Jenna, and seems to me you'd have to be a fool not to use her. You know Pent? Yeah, Jenna is Pent. However, unlike Pent, I don't have a spare slot for her, or I would if I was a bit more selective and optimal with my unit choice. Maybe that makes me a great fool. Given that I know what's coming in terms of endgame, we'll see. The chapter, like I said, is Fog, and we have a new enemy. Affectionately referred to by me as Abomborombas instead of Sacred Stone's Bales, we have Spider Ladies with weapon rank. Strong too, as I said, we're approaching late game, maybe even already there, so things are going to get harder quickly. We've got a few people to save and a few chests to loot. The one closest to us is a right taunting bastard, and it is a sudden reminder that there is no warp stuff in DLATMOL either. All I'm going to say is map design can be significantly more cohesive and robust when you don't have to worry about some nerd skipping half of it in the name of efficiency. Yeah, I guess it would be nice to warp Ronnie into that close room and loot it first thing. And yes, you could punish that by having an enemy SWAT team on the other side of the door, or you could circumvent the whole arms race by just not having warp staves. Look, I know this can be a touchy subject, and I absolutely don't condone the removal of warp from games that kind of need them, mostly Marty's games. As for echoes, well, nobody ever played Gaiden, and the loss of infinite warp was mitigated by healers leveling in a normal fashion and being a somewhat different game, to my experience. Anyway, DLATMOL, we've got to save Dorothy, Ty's sister, and regroup with the Brahma Faithful, led by Nox, who is absolutely hiding his power level. We also have a turn limit, which is only a problem for all the juicy loot. I'm a sucker for these split path to converging forces maps. If you can pull it off, it'll make your map seem way better than it is actually. Not that this is a bad map, though I'd certainly have a higher opinion of it if I could see what was on it. I'm not sure if it was bad rolls, stupid AI, or both, but turns out you might actually need to defend the objective on this objective defend map. After 5 turns, Nox will be attackless, which is different to defenseless. I noticed that the big zombie would take 3 hits to kill him, so not quite at my leisure could I reinforce him, but certainly I wasn't desperate. As for the trustworthy man in the centre, yeah, that's Gamliel, and he's going in the sin bin so Ronnie can loot what's under him. Sadly, I didn't have the foresight to dump him against the wall in the vain hope the Necrodragon might try to kill him. After that, there's not much coming out of fog, certainly nothing I can see, but they can see me. Aside from a surprise or two coming out of the fog, this map is rather merciful. Past experience with defense chapters in fog has me expecting relentless reinforcements, but there's a whole empty field that, in a hack with less restraint, would no doubt have some sort of uber monster. Of course. Where else would he be? The first Necrodragon instilled some slight panic, but at least thanks to Ronnie's rat vision I could prepare. The second one instilled no panic, overwritten as it was by resignation. Still, some last minute support point gaining, hopefully, and the chapter is cleared. Chapter 18 is definitely one of the sillier maps. We're finally going to kill Raum and end this war. No surprises or jack-in-the-box moments in this chapter, no sir. Well, the commentary has something different to say. Raum is certainly a master of sieges. This map is defined by one central feature. I'll call them snake runs. Single tile wide chokes that allow the enemy to bombard you. Enemies on this chapter also have quite a bit to throw at you. Some enemies mix effective weaponry with Reaver weaponry, others just flat out have 2 silvers, a common and effective strategy. There's a status staff, some siege magic, a ballista, powerful 2 to 3 range bows, you name it, they've got it. There's plenty to loot, and hopefully you've got a few spare chest keys because while Ronnie takes the centre room, you'll still want to be looting. Thankfully, there's no turn limit, and aside from tactician stars which remain broken, there's no incentive to rush. I have one complaint. The enemy gets way too many 1 to 2 range weapons for how restricted 1 to 2 range is for the player. I know this is deliberate, and making them scarce is a better idea than making them never double or have 20 weight or other stupid ideas that stupid ROM hacks have. I just see 2 armor knights with a short spear each, and honestly get a bit jealous. Pushing a mix of moving and not moving enemies aside, we push into the centre and up the 2 lanes and begin our slog through indirect fire. Of course, you can exploit the enemy. Watch this fucking idiot. Now, watch a different idiot. Me. Yeah, that didn't exactly go according to plan. Still, only 5 uses, so bear it and move in. Khan is an interesting unit, very much the opposite of what you'd expect and likely have. High defense but low speed, as opposed to Sherry who has a high speed but low defense. He's also got more range than Arjun has move, so like Shinon you've got to bait him out. Unlike Shinon, however, you don't kill him, and in fact once Arjun convinces him to stand down, he'll remain hostile. Just don't step into his range and you're fine. The dog reinforcements bearing down on us are a nuisance, but nothing that can't be handled. You could hold them in the snake run or use the choke point just above it. Facing off against the big man Raum himself, he does a VGTG. We do a VGN, VGTA, and then when we kill him, a VGW. Then when the walls open up, we do a VGS, especially because Dale is out of position. With Gusto indeed Raum, assuming someone is in range. Again, you're not really surrounded, you have a target-rich environment. The sudden reinforcements are very little threat to you, having assembled your full force in the throne room as is common sense when fighting a boss and per Arjun's advice. This is not the same as Mr. Surprise coming back to life even stronger, but I suppose it is similar enough in spirit. Luckily, Raum actually poses very little threat against your powerful units and a bit of triangle advantage. The Regent is dead, your invasion is successful, but oh no, who could have foreseen this? Maximilian is alive. He's not on your side, but he's not here to fight. He is instead here to warn you about the spooky gang and their voodoo bullshit coming to a head. Apparently they don't need the pastrami to break open the lock to their god, and now the palace town is on fire. All in all, this is another map that has some tactics completely fall to the wayside in the face of RNG, but if you're not a total goof, that can very much be mitigated, and you can absolutely use the terrain to your advantage just as the enemy does. Haste is somewhat rewarded, though clearing this map in 20 turns might not sound fast, it's probably on par, and as the turns go by you will have to do things like stop the enemy thieves. Not a conventionally difficult map, after so many promotions your dudes have got a significant power spike, but that's going to come crashing down next chapter. Said chapter is probably going to be the hardest so far, and guess what? It's all going to get harder from here. You cunt. Chapter 19 has another everyone says what they think moment, with the army being split between Orion and Frisia's callousness and desire to serve the greater good by letting the palace town and civilians burn, and Tact, Francine and Arjun's desire to save the people and secure more information from the Dark Sect, because Maximilian is clearly trying to take us on a ruse cruise. I like watching Frisia get angry and remain angry because she's a fucking psycho and is super upset about people not listening to her. The Tactician also displays some excellent interpersonal sleuthing, where Tactac's Tactician bettered themselves with book smarts and new strategies. DLATMOL's Tactician has worked to become as ruthless and conniving as their father. Both are good in their own ways. Tactac's is way more satisfying, but DLATMOL's might be better in terms of actually bettering the mind for war. Commentary is another little insight into the mind of the dev. As someone who once tinkered with ROM hacking, I can only imagine the tedium of writing an event where every recruited unit talks twice. Of course, it might be less tedious if I were to try it, given my planned hack had only 4 units. This is a standard route map, but there are also numerous villages to secure. Form your strategy as usual, with plans in mind to take the villages. You will have to adapt in a very particular way as the chapter goes on, but I wouldn't want to spoil the surprise. White Knight. Oh ho, that's rich. Fortunately, as you start the chapter, Bishop Nox warps in and says he can warp civilians out, so that's more or less a worry off your mind. There's still everything else to worry about though. Keep a tight formation and get through. Oh, and you may want to send Ronnie down the right flank. Our standard turn 1 reveal has Eligor mentioning attacking from the rear and the other guy mentioning her arrival before leaving. Now, I know what I'm in for. That doesn't mean I can prepare myself accordingly, especially because I don't remember her pattern. If you know what I'm talking about, then you understand. If not, well, buckle up. After blitzing pretty hard and getting a lucky dodge, by merely turn 4 have I moved Ronnie to the inn and recruited Ada. Ada is an important character, eventually revealed to be part of some hidden conspiracy group that you don't learn about until post-game. That would be a big deal, except we don't learn anything other than this conspiracy exists. Why in the hell did I not replace Ronnie with her last playthrough, aside from out of sheer spite? Actually, that was probably it. So at the end of turn 4, you see what I mean about knowing what's coming, mostly, but not being prepared for it. I can't believe the Delphi Shield is on such a short turn limit. Now you might be thinking, 8 move and 3 range, there's no way I can avoid that. Luckily it doesn't actually move, but it will incinerate anything within 3 tiles, so fucking run. With my heart rate increased by a decent amount, we've still got a few more villages to secure and we had better hustle. Not to mention Eligor is yet to appear, so we have to stay on our toes. Having cleared most of the map, turn 10 decides to give us a surprise. The dragon's second spawn point is much clearer in my head because I really wanted the black gem, but couldn't get it. I mean, Ada could steal it, but she'd end up like MILF Jerky, so it's a moot point. Ronnie just so happens to be right next to the big bastard, though his inventory is full. Whoops. With a slight adjustment, Ada steals the black gem like she would have last time, but this time I also employ the old wizard strategy of fly you fools. And fly actually does, very fast, very far away, because holy shit the dragon has too many stats. Eligor's reinforcements being entirely flyers, you can easily mop them up with your bow units. It appears I traded poor early game growths for several lucky dodges throughout the game. Turns out Khan takes 11 times 4 from Eligor, and he has 44 HP. This, I imagine, was deliberate and brings further distaste for all things Eligor, spear or not. Bait with someone else, Francine might be a better shout. Then have Ronnie steal his much needed speed wings. Mop up, job's done. What a map. Definitely easier by a huge margin when you know what to do, even in an approximate sense. The dev might really like the fire effect, but I'll be honest, I was a bit too worried on actually playing the game to take notice. The dragon is by far the coolest thing about the map. Francine offhandedly mentions how it was circling, which no doubt in your mind's eye you can picture retrospectively as it jumps from the top left of the map to the bottom right of the map. It's also something I think Fire Emblem tends to be too afraid to do, a threat that you simply cannot engage, especially this late in the game. Closest thing I can think of is the Black Knight, and maybe Evil Harden. Garnef too, I guess, but that's it. Also yes, this man's name really is Boots. Why he doesn't drop Boots, I don't know. Can't make too much fun of him. You might have noticed a few bosses in Tac have names like Cannoli, Strudel and Baklava. I guess Tact Guy would develop his hack while he was hungry. The last thing, and the pivotal moment of the chapter, is the route split between the heretical lands of Arabal and the Khotanese Plains. I have it on good authority that DLATMOL dev bizarrely likes the Sasay maps of FE6. I've got no experience, thus no opinion, as FE4, 5 and 6 are the FE games I haven't played. I played Echoes, I don't feel the need to play Gaiden. Sasay's reputation does precede it though, and I look forward to experience it for the first time after I've beaten the game, because I'm going with the devil I know.